All right, welcome everybody. We're getting queued up here. This is Mark McGraw. I got my good friend John Rosso. We'll do a better introduction here in a minute, but I know a lot of people here are logging in. I see them already. Good, John. How you doing today?
I am well, Mark. I am so excited about this. I had so much fun working on the 21st Century Prospecting online course with you. There's a lot of content in there, and I'm psyched to share it with our audience members today. So very cool.
Yeah, me too. Let's see who's joining us here on the chat box. Excellent, cool, great. We're going to get started in about 30 seconds. So we'll get cranked up and uh, and get rocking and rolling here with everybody.
Yeah, get yourself
John,
out a piece of paper or something to take some notes because the goal, I think, is to put some good content out there, things that are applicable and usable and tactically immediately.
let's talk about that while everybody's kind of getting settled and getting ready. I am a big believer in that. And anytime I go into something, John, I know you're the same way. I always want to think about what are my outcomes? What do I want to
Mhm.
get out of something? So, we're going to take, 45, 50 minutes, give or take here in terms of how we rock and roll. Think about what do you want to get out of a session on prospecting, and specifically, maybe you think about what mindsets you want to change. What is there a technique or two or things you want to get out of it? So just jot a couple things down right now. Make sure you have a place to take notes as well. And John, you ready to get started?
I am ready to get started, Mark.
Oh,
Let's get in.
all right, let's do it here. Okay, so first off, we're going to put a screen up here for everybody, and let's rock and roll. So with that, I'm going to let me introduce one of my best friends on planet Earth, Mr. John Rosso. So if you're a fan of Sandler, so many people I'm sure joining the webinar today are fans of Sandler. Many people maybe aren't familiar with Sandler at all. John is a legend in his own mind, without a doubt. We always tease him, ruggedly handsome, all around
Thank
great
you,
guy.
Mark. Thank you.
David H. Sandler Award winner, which is sort of the Sandler Ring of Honor or Lifetime Achievement Hall of Fame. Amazing guy. So everybody, welcome John Rosso here to our session.
Well, thanks, Mark. I really do appreciate it. And as I mentioned earlier, I loved doing the online course with you. Mark is, again, same here, one of my best friends on the planet. We've known each
Mm,
other for, I don't know, is it 15 years or how many
just
years is it
about.
now? Just
Yeah,
about
it is.
15 years. Mark, as well, is in that Ring of Honor and a David H. Sandler Award winner, but really a thought leader in selling effectiveness in today's world and in a very, very changing world where we're almost always remote today. So excited to sort of talk about what's changing and what's going on in the prospecting world, Mark. But really, my pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Yeah, indeed. So what we're going to do here for everybody is we're going to walk through some ideas with respect to prospecting in the 21st century. And this is a little bit of a prelude in terms of some things that we've put together in an online course for people. If they are interested, they can learn a lot more through that. But our goal here for the next 45 minutes, 50 minutes, is to just bring a ton of value to you guys and just kind of load you guys up with the types of things that could help us in terms of prospecting in the 21st century, prospecting in the world that we live in
Mhm.
right now. John, maybe the best place for us to start together is, how would you define prospecting? I mean, I think people could have different definitions or thinking about it in different ways. How would you define it?
Yeah, so I keep it pretty simple. I think it really is about how we, me, you, our team, gets in front of the right people at the right level, at the right organization, at the right time. And again, that's a multitude of ways. I mean, certainly the word prospecting conjures up the image of making cold calls, and cold
Yeah.
calls are still a valid way to go. There's no question, especially in today's world where people are not picking up the phone as much as they should. But it really is about how do we get in front of the right people at the right level, at the right organization, at the right time to be able to schedule a discovery call, whether that's by phone, whether that's by Zoom or some web platform, whether it's some face to face again someday. And there's so many different ways to do that effectively with technology coming into the 21st century. And of course, that's some of the things we'll talk about today and in our online course.
Yeah, indeed, John. And as we just think that through, I mean, maybe I tell you what, for the folks that are online with us together today, why don't we open up the chat box? Let's hear from you guys. What are some of the challenges that you guys are dealing with in the world we're living in today? And we all know that things have changed over the last, 4 months, 6 months, give or take. John, if we think about, and if you think, what are some of the things you're hearing from your clients in terms of what's changed and how things are maybe more challenging? Some ways they're easier, but what do you think?
Yeah, and it is a mixed bag on some people thinking it's easier and some people thinking it's more difficult. Certainly, there's pretty good research out there. One of them is from HubSpot, the CRM system HubSpot, that says year over year, prospects, clients, customers are receiving 76% more emails, marketing emails, sales emails than they were a year ago, while at the same time, we're seeing 26% less engagement on that. So things are getting harder because people sort of stayed at home and started throwing a lot of stuff against the wall, much of it ineffective. And so how do we break out all of that? How do we break through that crazy clutter and be effective in that way? So I think what I see changing is people have gravitated towards things like email and LinkedIn. If you've been on LinkedIn, you are seeing much more what I would call spam messages than you've ever
Yeah, a
seen.
lot.
Things that say, well, you're the kind of person I like to see in my network. We have some connections in common. Those are very weak openings that almost automatically set my defense wall up, and I'm looking to sort of delete you immediately. We've got to do a better job. And I think the good news is the ability to break through that clutter still exists. And people won't believe this. Many people won't believe this. Decision makers are more accessible than they've ever been because they're not in planes, trains, and automobiles. So it's how do we be effective at getting to those key decision makers because they're available. We just have to be better.
Yeah, and John, I see the same thing, and we're seeing some of those things in the chat boxes as well coming through. That for some reason it has, and we know that there's issues in terms of it being maybe a little bit more difficult. At least people think that it's more difficult. But to your point, John, I think sometimes it's almost easier in some respects to break through because people do have a lot more availability, and we're seeing things like the sales cycle getting a little bit shorter in terms
Mm.
of bringing people together, and there's a lot of good things that are happening in those respects as well. So with respect to changes, I tell you what, let's do this, John. Let's dive into some of the, if you will, behaviors, attitudes, and techniques that we can use today to be able to be more effective and get in front of more of the right people. And so let's and we in Sandler, we break things out in terms of success a lot of times into this concept of having the right behaviors, having the right techniques, and the right attitudes, that when you link those three things together, great stuff really starts to happen. um, John, if you were to think through, if we just even think high level for a minute, how would you define those behaviors, attitudes, and techniques? And then let's drill into some of the best practices for each one.
Yeah, sure. I think and I love the success triangle model. It's one of Sandler's model that says if we look at the attitudes would be what you think, feel, or believe. You can't get a hold of anybody in COVID. That's an attitude. Man, it's easier to get a hold of everybody in COVID. That's an attitude. Who's right? Who's wrong? Who knows? But it's what you think, feel, or believe. And if you look up the definition of a belief in like the dictionary, it would say something you know to be true based upon your past experiences. Doesn't mean it's true. It's something you know to be true based upon past experiences. And Mark, you and I have talked a lot about head trash. That's a Sandler term a lot of people hear about. And my favorite definition of head trash is the Mark Twain that says, it's not what you don't know that hurts you. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. And so that's what attitude is. It's what you think, feel, or believe. Behavior would be what you do. And attitude and technique would be how you do it.
Yeah, without a doubt. By the way, you're talking about attitude for a minute, John. I was writing on the board the other day. I was writing on a whiteboard the other day the word belief, and I realized for the first time in my life that the word lie, Lie, is actually spelled in the word belief. And that doesn't mean that all beliefs are bad, because some beliefs are very positive and very, very beneficial for us. There's supporting beliefs, but there's also non-supporting beliefs out there as well. And
Mhm.
those things get in the way. And one of the things I'd have folks think about together today is, are there beliefs that you hold today that actually are not supportive to helping you get to where you want to be? And
And Mark, people will
yeah,
defend some of those negative beliefs to the end, but you don't understand my world. You don't understand my market. You don't understand. You don't understand. We hear it all the time. We've been hearing it for 15, 20 years. But you're exactly right. We've got to sort of understand to be effective in 21st century prospecting. What do we need to think, feel, and believe? What do we need to do, and how? And we'll talk about that at all three of them. How do we need to do it? So let's
let,
dive on in. Maybe
let's
start
start.
with behavior. I don't know.
Yeah, let's. I think that's a good plan. Let's start with behaviors, and our goal together today is to identify. Have you guys jot down some of the best things that you can think through in terms of how do you change and what do you change about prospecting in the world we're in today. So John, let's talk about behaviors. And so, what are some of the things that you think of? I mean, maybe we want to talk a little bit about referrals, or maybe we want to talk about, I love the care model.
Hmm.
We should talk about those types of
Sure.
things, as far as how do we segment our activities and change what we need to change about prospecting today.
Sure. Well, let's define behavior first. So behavior to me is activity, as you mentioned, Mark, and it really is, as it relates to prospecting, it's the 100% controllable, measurable activities, behaviors that are typically strategic and important, but not urgent, right? Often when we think about prospecting, uh, those are the strategic and important things that we need to do to build pipeline, but they're not necessarily urgent. If you don't have a referral conversation today, the likelihood that you're out of business tomorrow is low. If you do skip sending out your LinkedIn in-mails today, chances are you'll be in business tomorrow. And it's one of the challenges in this COVID era where seemingly, and Mark, you and I've talked about this separately, how it seems like every bit of our day has been booked up,
Yeah.
right? We're no longer on planes, trains, and automobiles before. So unless you're being very disciplined about segmenting and time blocking your calendar to do those strategic, important, but non-urgent activities. And I think the Sandler care model, and I'll tell you what, Mark, I'll talk a little bit about the care model. Why don't you take a moment to define the care model for us? And then I'll talk a little bit about how we use it in prospecting.
So the care model is a way to classify accounts and classify your activities. So if you have a set of accounts, they might fall into one of four buckets. One bucket would be accounts you want to keep. Okay, there might not be a ton of growth, but you don't want to lose them. You just want to keep, and it's an acronym. So K is for keep. A stands for attain. These are target accounts that you would want to go bring in. This would be a focus list of accounts, business that you don't have today, but you'd like to have in the future. Man, I tell you, a bucket with respect to prospecting that is the next one is R, and that is recapture.
Mhm.
The recapture bucket is accounts that we maybe lost at one time, maybe you proposed something. Think about this for folks. What if you, with respect to prospecting, just go back and go look at what accounts a year ago, 6 months ago, 3 years ago, someone proposed. Maybe it was somebody else. Maybe you didn't even have the territory or the responsibility 3 years ago. But you could go back and look to see what proposals were done in the past and go back and revisit those people
Mhm.
under recapture. Um, we could talk about alumni in a minute too, but the E is expand. And in expand accounts, if you identify and classify those accounts, in expand, this is where we're getting a little bit of business, but we could get more, other products, other divisions, other groups. And John, I know you've got some really nice things with respect to building a cookbook or a recipe for weekly activities with respect to care. What else would you chime into about that
Yeah,
model?
and I love the care model, and I think what I teach and preach, Mark, is there's really three effective ways to immediately use care. This is one of the things I think you may want to put down on your hot list out of the webinar today. One is monthly, one is weekly, one is daily. So on a monthly basis, what you ought to be able to do is to take that care profile, keep, attain, recapture, expand. Again, remember the keeps, they're profitable, and your best customer, your best client is somebody else's best prospect. So we've got to take care of them. And so on a monthly basis, I used to say quarterly pre-COVID, but everything has sort of been time compacted in
Yeah.
COVID. If you say to me in COVID, call me in 3 weeks, that feels like the equivalent in December of you saying to me, why don't you call me at the end of next year? That's how quickly things are changing. So segment your customer base, your client base on a monthly basis into the quadrants of keep and expand, and then begin to think through what's your top 15, 25 that you're looking to attain, new logos. And then as Mark said, I'm going to have him comment in a moment, take a look at who should be in that recapture bucket. The simple act of taking the 20 minutes to segment and decide who's keep, who's expand, who's attain, who's recapture will set off at least 3 to 6 brain synapses in your brain, and you will discover new potential opportunities. It's crazy. It happens every single time. So that's monthly. On a weekly basis, what I want you to be able to do is to create a weekly cookbook. Now, Sandler's term for your goals and behavior plan is cookbook because it's your recipe for success. And so we would look on a weekly basis and create what are the 100% controllable, strategic, and important things we need to do in the keep quadrant. As an example, um, if we really want to form close relationships, if we can do something as simple as it's personal, significant, and unexpected, right? It might be me sending you an Amazon book because I know you're interested in A, B, C, D, E, F, G. That would be an example of a keep behavior, if you will. But taking the time to segment your behaviors for keep, for attain. And again, attain could include LinkedIn, emails, video prospecting, phone calls. I mean, virtual networking, centers of influence. And we talk about all of these, of course, in our online course. Recapture, the money in recapture, Mark. How many times have you and I talked to our client base and
It's
figured out
incredible.
how they've been able to pivot in this COVID era and really make up a lot of the distance that they were losing by going to recapture? It's been astounding. We're seeing rates of 50 and 60 and 70% of being able to re-engage. That doesn't mean they all become customers again, but it's amazing. So creating that weekly cookbook, that weekly behavior plan for keep, attain, recapture, and expand, and then putting a time block beneath each of those.
And this
And
is the day.
no, this is the week. This is the
Okay,
week
still week.
first.
Okay.
This is the week. But beginning to put a time block. Do you need 4 hours a week, 6 hours a week, 8 hours a week? Wherever you are in your business matters to you. But if you need 5 hours a week of pure pipeline development and you work a 40-hour week hypothetically, you don't have a 40-hour week. You've got a 35-hour week because in prospecting, you've got to pay yourself first. They've got to be
Yeah.
time blocked. The daily thing, Mark, is once you've got your weekly cookbook, to begin the day thinking who within those quadrants, who in my keep quadrant, attain, recapture, expand, who will I be reaching out to today? And how will I be reaching out to? So monthly, segment the client base, 3 to 6 brain synapses. Weekly, create your care cookbook and time block it. Daily, figure out specifically who you will be reaching out to in each of those quadrants and how you'll be reaching out.
There's a couple things jumping out at me with that, John, and I think we should talk about them. But let's start here. You mentioned something, and you went through it quick, that I want to make sure everybody caught, and that is personal, unexpected, and was it intentional? Was that the second
Significant,
one? Significant.
significant.
Tell
Yes.
everybody about those three, John, because I mean these are the kinds of things, these are the kinds of nuggets I think that are so valuable to people, because what happens is that people say, well, I've got to be different, I've got to break through, I've got to get the person on the other side that I'm trying to prospect to resonate with me, and this to me is such a great way to do it. I want to make sure everybody captures those.
Yeah, well, Mark, one of the rules we teach in Sandler is everybody is stroke deprived, right? Stroke is where you feel good. Someone's given you a stroke. and everyone is stroke deprived, and relationships matter.
Mm.
People buy from people. People buy from people they like. People buy from people who like them. And one of the ways to create a super stroke is by doing something personal, significant, and unexpected. And COVID has probably been uh, one of those areas where we're isolated and we can really get a chance to be able to do that. We have Many of us have dived so much more deeply into personal relationships, and something personal, significant, and unexpected. Again, it could be easy. It could be a subscription to a magazine, $19. I find out you're a fly fisherman, and I send you South Carolina Sportsman magazine. Or there's just so many things you can do. They're week on, week off in COVID environments, and they've got a 7 and a 9 year old. And again, sending out an Amazon book to them on, I'm making this up, of course, 28 activities to do at home with your child, just sort of comes in. So really caring and thinking about how to develop those relationships, and all things being equal, people buy the relationship. All things being unequal, people still buy
Yeah.
the relationship. So it's a really good way to sort of create the super stroke and build legitimate, lasting, sincere relationships.
Of which you can get referrals from, and we
Hmm.
can talk about that. John, I'm thinking, I just got we just bought a new house. Through that process, we obviously got a loan, and we got a loan through our bank. Our banker sent me. He knows I also like Manhattans. He sent me monogrammed glasses in the mail with a handwritten note appreciating my business, and it was monogrammed with the bank's logo. I love it. It was unexpected. It was certainly personal. I mean, it met all of that
Yeah,
criteria.
and significant to you. And just for the record, for those out there, Mark every Friday night sends me a picture of his Manhattans, and they're excellently made. So, but that is a really great example.
Yeah, it really is. And to unseat me, to get me to go to another bank at this point is going to be a very difficult thing to go do. And now the key for them is how do they leverage and generate
Hmm.
more referrals from it. Hey, John, one other thing before, we can spend some more time on the behavior corner, but I want to throw something, if you don't mind, let me throw something out to everybody about managing your weekly activities. One mistake that I see people make that I'd like to make sure that everybody that's participating today avoids is this. What happens is that we try to make up for lost time in prospecting. And so somebody, if they do block out time, I've seen people say, well, I'm going to block out all of Friday.
Hmm.
And what a mistake, because at some point you run out of energy, maybe something else happens and you can't get it done on Friday. So I think everybody, if you're not doing this today, make this one of your action items today. View prospecting as you would exercise in a good way. And that would be, rather than doing, let's say prospecting 5 hours once a week and just like pouring yourself in only once a week, do 1 hour every day for 5 days. Now, for many people, that's way not enough. Okay, for some of people, that's a lot more than they're doing now. We're not judging that one way or the other, but the encouragement is to do it a little bit a day rather than try to like pour yourself and do a ton in at any one time.
Yeah, and Mark, we spend a lot of time on this on the online course too, to help you understand how goals fit in, how leading indicators fit in, things you'll measure like first time appointments, first time opportunities, referrals. Uh, all of those are custom and different to your specific situation. So you're right. I mean, we've got to really figure that out. And consistency is the watchword, right? Consistency is the watchword.
And in the behavior corner of what we're talking about, you can go back and you can start to create measurement tools in terms of tracking what quantity of these activities that you're doing. So back to the care model, you can say, I'm going to do X number of activities that are going to be keep activities. And to your point, John, in the program we've put together, we walk through with everybody how to lay out a cookbook, which is a weekly recipe of the activities that you would want to do, such that when you do them, you can pretty much guarantee success. And you can have activities in each one of those four buckets: keep, attain, recapture, and expand. And there are different types of activities that fall into each one of those that ultimately, when you do them over a period of time, you get fit. Back to
Sure.
use the exercise metaphor
Well, and
analogy.
one of our one-liners, as you know, Mike, Mark, is your pipeline, the quality of your pipeline is directly related to your gut system, right? I mean,
Mhm.
think about that. I mean, we can be gutsier and we can be stronger if we've got a good pipeline. If we don't, there, we've always got that commission breath, right? We're always needy, and it actually reduces our effectiveness to close some of those. So building a strong pipeline is how do we find a way to long term become stressless prospectors?
Yeah, without a doubt. And people. This is a webinar on prospecting, but don't forget this: prospecting has a direct relationship to closing. To your point, John, a lot of times people will come to us as coaches and they'll say, "Hey, I need to help my team get better at closing." And then you start working with the team and you find out that they don't have enough in their pipeline. Therefore, they're not saying and doing the things that they need to do in order to get business
Hmm.
closed. They're afraid to do it because they're afraid that if they close an opportunity out and that it's disqualified, or for that matter, they close it and they win it, they got nothing to fill up the pipeline over here.
Yeah,
So,
true.
yeah, without a doubt. All right, cool. All right, so hey, other things you want to say about either the care model or behavior?
No,
Um,
I think we should just start jumping into technique.
uh,
We've got behavior on one corner, we've got technique. We'll talk about technique and attitude. I think we jump in and talk technique for a little while, and we'll close
yeah,
out with a little attitude
yeah,
and see where it goes.
yeah. Let's do it. Okay, so let's talk technique. John, in the course and for prospecting in general, again, a lot of people get their heads wrapped around that prospecting is just simply cold calling. It is not. There's a variety of different things there, one of which is referrals.
Sure.
And so, I don't know if you want to spend some minutes talking about referrals and what we do on that side of things. How do we do a better job of go back to that example of with the banker? How's that banker going to get more referrals for me? And how do we do a better job technique wise on referrals?
Mark, I've completely lost your audio. I
Oh, is
can't
that
hear a
right?
thing.
Is that right? Okay, I got you. Okay.
Okay, I got you. Oh,
Are we
oh my.
back? These things happen. By the way, welcome to 21st century. This is exactly what happens from time to time.
All
You
right.
do have some technical glitches from time to time. This is going to happen. Are you
Repeat
with
your
us?
question. Repeat your question, Mark.
Yeah, no worries. Hey, John, we're talking tech. This look. Hey, by the way, for everybody's sake, you can hear me now, right, John?
I can.
Okay. Look, for everybody's sake, these things are going to happen in the world that we're living in today. So let's just push through them. Let's just these things are going to happen when you guys are making sales calls. One thing that we found that often helps is to tell people up front, hey, we're using technology. Who knows what'll happen? And then if it does happen, you've kind of predicted the future a little bit there,
Yeah.
as we have. So, John, the question I was going to ask you is with respect to technique. Why don't you fire a couple things to folks about technique items? It could be anything with respect to prospecting, but maybe you've got some referral ideas.
Yeah,
Uh,
sure. Yeah, let's chat on the referral side. Certainly, people listen. We would love a full pipeline of referrals and introductions, and there's sort of old research, good research, historic research that says that, referrals are 20, 60, 20. 20% of your clients, your customers, refer to you without even asking. Uh, God bless those folks,
yeah,
right? Because we're usually trying to live off those people. 20% won't, even if they love you, but it's that movable middle, that 60%, right? That would absolutely, if you had a proactive conversation. And when we ask people about, are they getting enough referrals? It's a universal no. And when we ask them why, they give us these two reasons. One, we're not asking. So take a moment for our listeners, our webinar attendees today, and see if we're convicted by that one. We're just not asking.
yeah,
Or when we ask poorly. Here's an example of a poor ask. It's a simple yes or no question that probably is answered by, let me give it some thought. Mark, do you know anybody who you think might be able to use our services? You
Okay,
know, I
watch.
appreciate, yeah,
Here's the answer. They're like, look, they look up. That I'd like to help you if I could. Is it? Is that kind of what happens? And I
yeah,
can't think
sure.
of anybody, right?
Well, and they say, let me think about it. And once I do, I'll give you a call. And the phone never rings on those,
Yeah,
right? One, we've got to find ourselves traps to be able to have the conversations. I'll give you two things that have been interesting, and then we'll talk a little bit about the technique side of not getting caught until let me think about it. Um, One is, especially in the age where video is coming in, and Mark, you and I are using video a lot, not only for prospecting, but for engaging. And I'm not talking about live video like we're doing now, but pre recorded video with tools like Vidyard, for instance. Um, it's one of the traps are the ability to say, if I've got a meeting with you coming up and I know you're a good client or a good center of influence, I've been asking people to add uh, either by video or in an email, uh, some wording like this. Um, Mark, our agenda is A, B, C, D, E, F, G. At the end of that, if you're okay with it, I'd like to maybe invest 15 minutes and have a brainstorming session with you, Mark, about the people who would be in your circle, in your network, who could be open minded to learning a little bit more about what we do, if you're okay with that, right? Uh, by the way, when asked, 95+% of the people are okay with that. And now you've sort of trapped yourself,
mm,
right? So again, if I say, hey, we've got ABC agenda to accomplish. If you're open to it, I'd like to take the last 5 minutes and brainstorm. I love the word brainstorm because brainstorm's not an ask. Hey, do you know
yeah,
anybody, Mark? I want to brainstorm with you, people who you know, people in your network, people in your circle who may be open minded to just understanding a little bit about what we do. Would that be a conversation you're comfortable with? If they say no, and they never do, you're like, no worries. That's the reason why I was asking. If they say yes, now you've got a trap.
yeah,
And that trap can happen in, again, if we're in the moment, I'm forgetting, I'm wimping out in the moment. But if we take the time to do that in advance, I've been shocked. People have come with, I've really given that some thought. I've got a list of 4 people. You do? So it's kind of been fun in that regard. I think the second tactical technique is when you lead people through that discussion. Do not make it a question, make it a conversation.
yeah,
Again, a question is, oh, by the way, do you know anybody? Or even who do you know? Who do you know is no better because your brain is freezing. I've got to be able to, once I get agreement to have the brainstorming discussion. In fact, one of my favorite phrases is, let's just brainstorm, Mark. Uh, if, if anybody comes to your mind who meets these criteria, let's jot their name down. That doesn't mean you should introduce me. You and I can decide that later. And that takes a lot of pressure off. But the ability for me to use a phrase like, Mark, there's really 3 different types of people in an organization that we do our best work for. Would it be helpful if I painted a picture for you of those 3? And then if anyone comes to mind, we can sort of jot the name down. That doesn't mean you should introduce us to. You and I can decide that later. And then I do observable, legitimate characteristics that have your brain synapses fire because people absolutely come to mind. And it slows the process down and it largely eliminates let me give that some thought and I will get back to you. So a couple cool things I think from the referral side. One last thing I'm seeing is everyone is trying to get better meetings and even more meetings in the age of COVID and remote world. So even if I deal with a strategic partner, your banker you mentioned, right, or someone who would interface or work with your type of client or prospect, one of the behaviors, right, one of the behaviors would be uh, in role play. Mark, you and I have talked a little bit about trying to expand our networks and being helpful to one another. Um, why don't we put 15 minutes on a web call, you and I, make sure each of us have access to our LinkedIn contacts. Maybe this weekend we'll have a chance to look through those. My goal on that Zoom call uh, is you and I can sort of talk through the top 3 kinds of profiles and maybe leave making some decisions and even sending some introductory emails by the end of that 15 minutes. And we're scheduling very directed center of influence referral swaps has been working really well in this time of COVID as well.
And John, that could be, even for some people, that could be a behavior. I mean, to kind of call back to the behavior corner, is how many center of influence meetings do you have? How many
Mm,
referral asks do you have at any given time? And again, not to go too far back to our behavior corner of the triangle, if you measure something, you'll see a 30% increase. You and I have talked
just
about
by
that
measuring it,
just by
just
measuring it.
yeah. And if you're conscious and disciplined, you'll see up to a 600% increase. So it is wild. What you measure is what gets done. And if you're measuring it, it's not changing your behaviors, then it's a waste of a measurement.
And John, when you went through the technique side of generating more business through referrals and prospecting through referrals, I want to make sure everybody caught this. John, in effect, as that technique is, he's referring back to a concept at Sandler we call an upfront contract. And those of you who are familiar with it, you know what it is. If not, we can get into it. But an upfront contract buys you some time for an outcome. It reaches an agreement that, in John's case, as a technique for generating business and prospecting for referrals, it's, can we take a few minutes together? So it's not who do you know when they look up at the ceiling. It's
Right.
let's take a few minutes together, brainstorm together. So now when you do that, you've got an allotted time by which you're going to spend and focus in on it. And that
Yeah.
causes, if you slow down too, which is another great technique for generating more business and more prospecting.
And one of the things that Sandler has been so big on, and Mark, is how can you be authentic and how can you be vulnerable? I mean, if one of the reasons why you haven't asked is because you're uncomfortable and you feel as if I might be imposing upon the relationship, say it. You know, I wanted to have a chance, Mark, to potentially brainstorm with you about people who you may know in your network who may be open-minded to learning a little bit more about what we do. I've been uncomfortable sort of bringing up that subject. The last thing I would ever want to do is impose upon our relationship. So if that's not a comfortable conversation, let me know. No, 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 I'm good.
Yeah,
But you can put it out there, and it all goes away because one of the reasons why people don't ask is they think they may be risking either A, rejection, or B, some of that relationship juice that they don't want to lose. Put it out front. And and that happens, as you know, Mark, through almost everything we do in prospecting, finding a way to do what we would call a pattern interrupt
it's
to
a big one.
sound different than every other salesperson, stereotypical salesperson out there.
And a pattern interrupt, for those that aren't familiar with the term, it's a way to shake things up and it's almost like the record scratch where someone's in a flow of doing something and then all of a sudden they hear a quote pattern interrupt, and that causes them to shake their head a little bit and pay attention to you. We use a lot of that in prospecting. We go into a lot of those different
Hmm.
varieties in the
Hmm.
course. John, your favorite pattern interrupts that you use to kind of shake
Yeah,
people up?
so I'd like to hear yours as well. My favorite pattern interrupt is I'm a complete straight shooter, at least in my mind, right? So I guess to describe a pattern interrupt, let's describe a pattern. Mark, you and I have probably observed thousands of prospecting calls, and many of them commit hate crimes. Hate meaning Hayt, which is how are you today? So a
Hmm.
standard prospecting call has the wrong tonality, which is an up. I'll demonstrate it.
Yeah.
Ring, ring, ring. This is Mark. Oh, hey, Mark. John Rosso here at ABC. How are you today? Right, and you can almost feel the defense wall descending. Yeah, fine. What do you got?
I think my eyes rolled in the back of my head when you just said that. In fact, yeah,
Yeah, well, and we talk about we should learn to be unjust, which is again a little tongue in cheek because we use so much less than language. Think about a typical voicemail. Oh, hey, Mark. No, again, listen to the tone, happy, upbeat, tonality rising at the end, sort of wimpy, mother may I. Oh, hey, Mark. John Rosso here calling from ABC. I just wanted to reach out to see if there might be any interest in talking about if you wouldn't mind, I'd certainly appreciate just a quick call back and, *7, delete. So a pattern interrupt is anything kind of other than that. And as I said earlier, I like the vulnerability,
Mhm.
straight shooter play. So, but listen to the tonality a little bit. We talk a lot about this on our course. There's a little bit of implied authority. Ring, ring, ring. This is Mark. Hey, Mark, it's John Rosso. Calm, right? But the tonality is going down a bit, not up. Not, oh, hey, Mark, it's John Rosso. It's ring, ring, ring. This is Mark. Hey, Mark, it's John Rosso, with a little bit of a pause. Hey, Mark, it's John Rosso. It's the same way I would call one of my kids when they were younger if I wasn't angry. Hey, Joe, come here. Hey, Mark, it's John Rosso. Hey, Joe, come here. It's the same
Mhm.
tonality. Um, and then I'm disarmingly honest. I am telling the disarming, honest truth. Um, Mark, I'm looking for a little bit of help. At a role play, I am looking for help. Mark, I'm looking for a little bit of help, and people want to help you. Mark, I'm looking for a little bit of help. I don't know if it's going to make sense to talk. Very few salespeople, stereotypical salespeople, are starting that way. People want to help. And then, as you talked about, Mark, we can go into our upfront contract. Um, One of my favorites here is, Mark, I'm reaching out to you for two specific reasons. Let me share with you what they are, and then maybe you and I can figure out should we talk further if that works. Again, I'm not saying, I ask people all the time, what percentage of people will say yes? 50, 60, 80, 90. It's 99 and
It's unbelievable.
95 if you're bad at this. It's still 95 if you have horrible tonality. Because again, there's a curiosity factor, there's a tonality edge. So again, put together, for me, it might sound like, this is Mark. Hey, Mark, it's John Rosso. Mark, uh, I'm looking for a little bit of help. I don't know if it's going to make sense for us to talk. I am reaching out to you for a couple specific reasons. Let me share with you what they are, and then maybe you and I can figure out if we should talk further. That's a 99% yes. And it's okay not to believe that. What it's not okay is not to do it and
Yeah.
test it. So, Mark, I'd be curious on your side, some of the, because there's a lot of them. There's not an infinite amount, but there's tens to tens of different pattern interrupts.
Yeah. By the way, let's go back to referrals. If I get a referral somewhere, there's a pattern interrupt for referrals too. If somebody, if I was referred to somebody, I'm calling Bob, and John, you said I should call Bob. One of my favorites is if I call Bob, I say, "Hey, Bob, it's Mark McGraw at Sandler." Pause again. And I think that's important. What John said a minute ago for everybody, slow down, take your time anytime you're doing these things. And Bob says, "Yeah, how can I help you?" I said, "Sounds like my name doesn't ring a bell. How about John Rosso? John Rosso ring a bell? I mean, do you admit to knowing John Rosso? I mean, in public? You throw a couple little lines in there. Guts and humor go such a long way,
Hmm.
both
Hmm.
in email, in voice, in video. We're seeing more and more people use video these days to do video prospecting. That's again specific back to the individual,
Hmm.
something we cover in the course.
Hmm.
So without a doubt, I mean, that's one of my favorites, especially with respect to referrals. I want somebody to laugh
Hmm.
if possible, in the first 30 or 40 seconds.
And
Uh,
and and the traditional pattern is, and I can't believe people still say this. This is a bad call. Ring, ring, ring. This is Mark. Oh, hey, Mark. John Rosso from ABC. I got your name from.
yeah,
I got your name from. I mean, talk about squandering every piece of relationship leverage. Even if you're not the make them laugh kind, the ability to say, "Hey, Mark, it's John Rosso." As you said, it sounds like that name may not be ringing any bells. Honestly, John, it's not. Can you help me? Uh, Mark, I had a nice conversation with Dave Matson the other day. He and I got around to talking about the work that you two are doing together. He thought it might be important we speak. I promised him I would call. Think about the posture on that versus, oh, hey, Mark, I got your name from Dave.
I
Just don't
promised him I would
squander it.
call.
I
Yeah,
pro Slight edge.
it is.
Pro
It's a whole game. It's
Slight
everything is
edge.
slight edge,
Hmm.
without a doubt. There's no question about it. Hey, John, email prospecting. I mean,
Hmm.
there's a lot. It's a lot of things that we covered in
Hmm.
there too. And there's only so much we can do here. But I want you to know we're going to try to deliver to you as much as we can here in our session that we have here together today. Thoughts about email prospecting and some of the things that you're finding that are more effective than others.
Yeah, so let's talk about it. As I mentioned earlier, 76 year over year. higher, more emails. We're flooding your inbox, and 26% less engagement. And I think the world has certainly become polluted. It was polluted pre-COVID. It's like piling on in COVID. So we've got to find a way again to break the rules. One of my favorite methodologies, whether you're using LinkedIn messaging, LinkedIn InMail off of Navigator, um, emails, is a kind of a three-part formula where the first part, and this is where everyone skimps and they screw it up. The first part is called personal connection. How can the person I'm sending it to know this can only be sent to you, Mark? Only to you. And so this is not where you say, I was looking on LinkedIn and you're the kind of person, I like to get to know. Come on. Well, Mark, it seems that we have a number of connections in common. I could say that to 7,000 people. You're all getting LinkedIn requests in LinkedIn inbox that are saying those kinds of things. So a personal connection needs to be a personal connection. One, it could be a referral. Well, that's easy, right? I mean, that's a lay down if you've got a referral. But even if it's not referral, we need to be good at the kind of research that that really makes a difference. Um, Meaning, uh, you've got to spend. This is what I'm preaching, Mark, to our clients. Is any research has to take you 95% less time than a typical salesperson. I see. I mean, because research may mean to a lot of people creative avoidance. Hey,
Mm.
I'm spending 25 minutes to research a cold call, only to find out that I'm going to have a 1 in 11 chance of connecting, or whatever it would be. So I've got to be able to do research using, and we talk a little bit about this, but well, we talk a lot about it using Google search tips like file type colon PDF, all these sort of site colon, right? These things that we're doing to be able to find out, Mark, that you gave a presentation to, I'm making this up, but the Atlanta Business Journal on ABCDEFG. Because if I reach out to you and say, Mark, had a chance to read the article that you wrote in the Atlanta Business Journal on ABCDEFG, and I've got a question on X, it's only you. And so taking a little bit of time to find a legitimate personal connection. And when people tell me this was working, but it's not working anymore, I found they've gotten lazy on that part. So you've got to get good, and we really talk through some of the tools in our course, but you've got to get good at understanding those search tools because it needs to take you 2.5 minutes, not 22 and a half minutes.
I think that's a good number too. 3 minutes or less to
Mm-hmm.
prospect
Mm-hmm.
or to do the research that's necessary. Try to find maybe three things that would be unable for any sort of email marketer to be able to put into a merge field. And if you don't know what the merge field is, that's where they take your first name and they put it at the beginning of the message. That's just a field. So
And your
you
company name,
and your company name. So you got to craft these messages in a way that they actually that when the receiver gets it, that there's at least three places where they're seeing something that's personal connection. Could be the school. That's really hard for computers to do merge codes with. I received a message the other day, and you see above me it says "Help people make money, have fun." That was actually in the subject line. I'm going to read that. That
you're going to
person
read that.
did the research with me. And so when you make these personal connections that way through email, you increase the open rate. One other thing, and I'm watching the clock here with us. Wow, time is flying. One other thing we got to think about is keeping the messages short too. The
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
longer the message is, generally speaking, the less effective it is with email messaging to people
Yeah,
specifically.
Mark, we'll talk generally about 100 words. Now, I ask people 100 words and no one knows what that means. They're like, I don't know, is that 27 sentences? Is it one sentence? It's about 3 sentences. The first
Yeah.
sentence is personal connection. The second sentence is your value statement, your call to action, kind of a third party story about how you help people in similar positions. And then the third is a call to action. And the call to action is works much better if it ends with a question mark. There's a 20-30% increase in response rate if it ends with a question mark. And some of that could sound like Even if there's not an immediate need and only a down the road interest, are you open to a 15-minute exploratory conversation question mark? Would be an example of just one call to action. And if you can, now this is an unbelievable number, but if you can do a decent job on personal connection, and personal connection, again, as you mentioned, could be a person, a referral, that's easy. It could be research on you personally, or it could be relevant and recent news about the company they work with in descending order. That's their value. Referral, research about you individually, and then relevant and recent news about the company. So the three are personal connection, your third party value statement about how you help people in their position, specifically, not about you being in business 142 years, and then a call to action that ends in a question mark, 100 words or less, ideally.
And as I mean, what I'm sitting here just thinking about is how many little techniques that
Mm,
there are that we can go through, and there's so many. One that many people may have just totally missed, and then let's jump over and talk attitude stuff, and and we'll kind of land the plane here. But one thing that you've done, and I've probably done a couple of times here too, is you've listed the number of things, and here's what I mean by that. There's three things to think about. And so if you're prospecting, you might say, hey, there's mainly three reasons why people reach out to us, or people that want to speak to us. There's three reasons. And then you go through those three reasons. If you state there are three of something, people tend to listen to all
hmm
three. You don't
hmm
lose them through the message. Now, that's a very subtle, but one of many, many, many
And that's
techniques
true in
that
email. That's true on the phone call.
you
That's
can use it
true.
everywhere.
That's you can use it everywhere.
Absolutely. And so the more you can integrate those small little techniques, the better we can be at prospecting and navigating the world that we're living in
And we
today.
talked about it being such slight edge. So I know we can only, we've got limited time, Mark. I think we got to jump into attitude, but
Let's do it.
there's so many cool techniques, and I was so pumped to work with you on the course.
Let's go to attitude without a doubt. And there's probably nothing more important than having our mindset straight when it comes to prospecting and prospecting in today's world. There's a couple things I'll throw out too, John, as we collaborated on that together. But when you think attitude and prospecting, what are some of the things that you feel are most important to have in the world we're living in today?
Well, again, I'll take some that are a little less inspirational and a little bit more inspirational. Here's one that's a little less inspirational. You don't have to like prospecting; you just have to do it,
Amen.
right? You don't have to like it; you just have to do it. One of the ones that are more ethical, that are more inspirational is our friend Jody Williamson talks about the ethical selling model, where it's unethical to sell somebody something you don't need. Amen. It's equally unethical not to sell something they don't need. I mean, if you think about a world where supply chains are disrupted, people are struggling. I mean, we are the cure, right? If you don't have a belief that what you do is absolutely helpful for the client prospect, get out of the business and move somewhere else. But in our world, we know we're the cure for sales cancer, for lack of a better word. We're at 20 times return on investment. We change lives. It becomes a moral and ethical responsibility to reach out. I'm always amazed that people can send out 1,000 mailers, get a 2% response, which is high, and not feel rejected by the other 98. Yet we send out three emails and get one reply back, not the other two, and we're like, oh my gosh, only one replied. So we really have to get out there and believe in what we're doing. So Mark, if you want to sort of play
Here,
off that or give me a couple of
here,
your mindsets.
man, I tell you, here's a word that comes to my mind as you're describing it, John. And I think about this all the time. It's a disservice not to
hmm
call. You are, and this is an attitude and a mindset from a prospecting point of view. It's a disservice not to reach out to the person. It's a disservice not to ask for that referral or introduction. It's a
hmm
disservice not to do the work. If you believe in what you do, and you have conviction in all of that together, oh my gosh, how powerful is that? Without a doubt.
Yeah, and you're cheating yourself, you're cheating your company, you're cheating your prospect if we don't have those kinds of conversations. And one of the things we talked about earlier in technique, we didn't really talk about this, but we talk about the no pressure call. This is no pressure. I mean, this is what we say in our upfront contract, but we're going to say it right now just as part of reality. Let's you and I have a conversation, Mark. If it's not going to work or there's not a good fit, no harm, no foul. If it makes some sense, tremendous. We'll have a further conversation to see if we can help you. Again, if not, no worries. That's not necessarily the exact way we say it, but that translates. into our no pressure conversation.
It's almost like the less that you care about the outcome, the better off you're going to be. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, in a roundabout way. And I'll share this story. One of the best lessons that I ever learned from a mindset point of view and attitude about prospecting, I got from George Clooney. And there was an interview that George Clooney was had, and of course he was George Clooney, the star he is today. But they were interviewing him about when he wasn't a star, and he was saying that he would go on auditions and he was not getting jobs, he was not getting work, so he was, if you will, prospecting for a
Mm-hmm.
job, not getting the business. And he said, it wasn't until I learned that when I go in, I have no job. The worst thing that happens is I come out and I have no job. The only thing that can happen that if I go in and get the job, it's a total win. I went in
Yeah.
with nothing, I come out with nothing. But if I come out with in his case, a role, it's all upside. You play with house money every single
Right.
time you
Right.
prospect. And
Mark, I
that's a
can't believe I've
mindset of
known you for
abundance.
15 years and you've never told me that story. That's a really good story because it really is. You're playing with house money.
You're playing with
So
house money. And that's the kind of mindset we really want to have. So with that, I tell you what, I hope everybody pulled away a number of things from today's session together. We agreed we'd take a couple of minutes here at the end, share with you guys just a little bit about the prospecting course on this side. Let me just put a screen up here with this for you guys, where we can talk a little bit about this, because today we went into this and we want to load you guys up with as much information as we possibly can. But there's only so much that we can do in the time that we have allotted here today. But we have, and John and I collaborated, and we put together over 8 hours of the kinds of things that you guys got maybe 45 minutes on
with a
together
lot of this
today.
video role play that we're doing like we did today, so a lot of video role play.
A lot of things that are very nuanced about the things about tonality and the things that John brought up as well. And basically, it's an entire system for how you would go about creating an entire system, including your plan, your mindset, and the techniques to prospect and generate enough business, sort of a do-it-yourself guide. So we put a lot of work into it. We pulled a lot of resources together. We think it's really fantastic for you. So if you're interested in doing that, down below on the screen, it says sandler.com/prospecting. That's the URL you would pop over to. If you do that right away, there's a 20% discount off of the course that's being offered, only as a part of you being a part of this webinar. Love to have you guys take a look at that and get involved with it. It's super valuable, and I think it would really help a lot of people that are struggling to prospect and get more business in today's world. John, anything you would add to what we got going on as we
No, I
as we
think
land the plane here together with
Yeah,
everybody?
no, I think first of all, I appreciate having the chance to work with you and spend all those many hours in the studio recording this with you, Mark. I think it is. It's a do-it-yourself prospecting system in a box, 8 hour plus content, a lot of good role plays, a lot of good subtleties and nuances, as you mentioned. I think we're good. Head to sandler.com/prospecting, find yourself a way to get the 20% discount, and I think that's it. I appreciate it, Mark.
Yeah, and thanks for everybody who joined in together today and took
Thank
some
you.
time. I always
Yep.
appreciate people that invest in themselves and take the time to invest in themselves. So, with that, we will wrap up from here. Enjoyed the time with you, John. Always a pleasure to see you.
My
One of the
pleasure.
greatest
Thanks.
people on earth. And we'll see you guys soon.
Thanks,
Okay.
guys. Appreciate it. Looking forward to
Appreciate
it.
it, everybody.
Bye.
God bless.
You want to hit a star? You want to hit a Alt C to stop the recording?